they're saving money and time by taking the time to do it in the manner that we're asking them to. So at the end of the day, they're profitable and they're successful. They're a true partner. We're being a partner of theirs. So if you're asking me how I would communicate that today and moving forward, that would be my first approach, would be, we have evidence, overwhelming evidence, as a matter of fact, of how the program works and how it works well, but we're asking you to follow our lead on it.
Welcome back to Built Different, a podcast and community choosing to approach innovation differently. I'm Grant Hagan.
I'm Brian Vizzaretta.
And we're on a mission to rewrite the narrative around what innovation truly means.
Last season, we did 12 episodes more focused on the field.
And this season, we packed up our gear, joining teams in site trailers, offices, and even a few podcast studios, where we focused on the executive level and how innovation is making an impact within their organizations.
New this season, we're introducing live streams to invite you to join the conversation.
Also, we want to equip you by providing show recaps from each episode in our new Built Different download. Think different, be different, and build different. That's awesome. Well, welcome back to the Built Different podcast, powered by Drone Deploy Instruction Site. Joined with Brian Vizzaretta. I'm one of your hosts, Grant Hagan. Joined with Randy and Sean today here in Nashville, Tennessee. This is super fun. Brian and I's first time visiting, which is exciting. You guys have been great hosts, not only just today, but it's been cool to see your guys' project. We're here on Vanderbilt's campus here in Layton's job site trailer, which is really cool. Literally across the street, we're seeing all sorts of construction going on over at Vanderbilt, and it's just been really fun. So we have Randy and Sean that are going to give us a little background about your guys' role. And really the theme of the season, again, is really how technology can be implemented really from kind of the mid-level management above. And we have some really fun stories that we're going to get into with Randy and Sean's relationship, which we got to talk a little bit about before we hopped on here. But would love for maybe, I guess you, Randy, would you kind of give us a little background about yourself, your time here at Layton, what your role is, and then we'll kind of move over to you, Sean.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So Randy Christiansen, I'm a senior VDC manager with Layton Construction. Been in the industry for about 16 years. I was with another smaller GC before coming here to work for Layton. And it was interesting, the position that I came into for Layton was here in Nashville, whereas most of the BIM department VDC guys were in our corporate headquarters in Salt Lake. But with the start of this milestone project for Vanderbilt University, they realized, the executive leadership early on, that they were going to need somebody with that knowledge in the trenches with everybody. And so they opened up the position to have somebody here locally on the job site. And so that is where I am here now. And I've loved being here for the past 5 years on this project, working with Sean and doing some incredible work.
Yeah, we got a really great parking lot view of the project earlier today, just from all the stuff that Randy's doing. And it's cool how much stuff you guys have done in the last 5 years is crazy. Even as a first time here at Vanderbilt's campus, it's a beautiful campus, which is no surprise to y'all building it. But yeah, really cool. Thanks for intro here. And Sean, yeah, would love to hear a little bit more about
my name is Sean Farrell. I'm our construction manager. It's kind of like same as a project executive in some other companies' roles. I've been with Layton for about 8 years. I've been in the industry about just under 40, and about 38. I'm an Air Force veteran. Did about 7 years active duty and then got out and been doing this the rest of the time. I came to Nashville in 2004, and I have been working on Vanderbilt's projects since 2007. And there's a little break where I went to California and Arizona on work and came back with the opportunity to do, as Randy put it, it was a put us on the map kind of a project here at Vanderbilt. This Gothic dormitory project was a great endeavor for both the university and for Layton. Frankly, it was a one-of-a-kind job, and you guys got a chance to tour it today. We're out on the third building. It's a $430 million project. We're into our fifth year now, and we're going to wrap things up in about a year, a little less than, right around this time, and with the hopes of having more work. But since being here, we've also added on the Vanderbilt medical side. Now we're doing quite a bit of work for them right now. We're getting ready to endeavor on a rather large expansion at the Children's Hospital, and we do quite a bit of work over there as well. So Vanderbilt's been a very good client for us, and it's been a great place for us to grow. And for Randy and I, we've got a great history here. I mean, he changed my mind on a lot of stuff over the years and how I look at things. But my experiences come from kind of the old school, and and the technology that's rolled out, and it rolls out regularly. Frankly, I see it every day, and it really comes down to how's it applied, who's the one applying it, and how is it being taught to our folks, and really that's the difference. So I think today we'll be talking a little bit about that, because those stories they're pretty encompassing, and there's a lot of history here between Randy and I that are all good, but it started out kind of ominous, you know.
Man, what I heard in there was great stories, great projects, great teams, and it's true. I mean, Brian and I have been here today and just got to experience that, not only just walking and meeting more of your guys' team, but I mean, even just the synergy between the two of y'all. And we had lunch here earlier, and you guys are just laughing, and
yeah.
It's funny. I think, you know, at the end of the day, of course, we build buildings and we look back and kind of the legacies of our career, but we kind of forget about the people side of it, you know, and not only building people along the way with the buildings that we get to work on, but yeah, it just oftentimes kind of gets overlooked because you see the tangible buildings and can point to things and things like that. But it's really the relationships I'm excited to get into, because it really is fun. It's fun hearing your guys' story, and we hope, even for the folks that are listening too, that it's encouraging, that, you know, hopefully to find someone that you can really, you know, rub elbows with and really get in the dirt with and say, hey, like, we can disagree on a lot of things, but we want to agree on the things that are the things we need to agree on, and that's to do it better. And to, I loved your quote earlier about building predictable outcomes. Is that right?
Delivering predictable outcomes. That's a big statement that Layton has that I love in every way.
Yeah, I heard that, and I'm like, man, that is so true. And Brian had a funny, tell the analogy. I thought it was a funny sports analogy to it. And
No, I was just thinking, it's like, you know, sports teams don't just go into the game, right? You watch film, you go through practices, and you kind of go over the plays you're going to go. You don't just kind of wing it. And I think, you know, BIM is kind of like the first try or attempt at getting into that game.
Yeah. So
we don't just grab a set of prints and go out in the field and we need to get some 2x4s and we'll figure this thing out. No, we can't do that anymore.
I think we did for many years, though.
Yeah.
And the technology has taught us that we can't any longer.
With schedules nowadays and budgets to maintain, and the level of risk is just getting higher and higher. And in order to mitigate that, we have to pursue ways that we can, as I said, deliver predictable outcomes. And all of that comes down to planning with real intent and focus, and then delivering that with precision in the field in order to bring that level of risk down.
I can't stop writing notes fast enough. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you guys are full of one-liners over here.
we also have another phrase for us here at Layton, and this one is, I hope resonates in this, best in class. We consider our goal every day is to be best in class. We're not just builders. We want to be the best at all of it. And that starts with our relationships. And because you hit it on the head, this is a people business at the end of the day. And we can talk about applications of technologies and applications of being master builders. It's a big thing for me to be a master builder. But none of that really equates to success unless you can bring a group of people together who all have maybe their own separate agendas, and they all have to come into one agenda, and it's best in class is the goal for us. And that means we have metrics for success that range from being profitable to a satisfied client. But at the end of the day, we want people growing, and we want our subcontractor base feeling like they're a true partner of ours. That's a real big thing to us. So these best in class, there's several metrics that gets us there, and I use that term a lot.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's fun. I have gotten to work with a few of your other folks in other offices and project teams across Phoenix and Salt Lake and other offices, and it's very clear the way that you guys have approached not just building buildings and best in class, but also people.
Right.
I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed, I think, every Layton employee that I've met, not only just to talk about construction related stuff, but it's like, man, I mean, we were going back and forth, Sean. It's like, holy cow, we're from probably 30, 45 minutes away from each other in small town Iowa. And you realize how small this industry is, and you're like, man, we're halfway across the country here in a place that Brian and I are meeting more people. It's like, wow, this is a lot smaller than you think.
Yeah, my guess is you and I shoveled the same snow at one point. So
probably not as much here in Nashville and
right,
Dallas anymore,
exactly.
But it definitely felt like enough back then. But man, where do we want to go? I think a question I kind of have to kick us off maybe is, Sean, let's talk about a little bit about the relationship that you and Sean had as kind of let's go through that a little bit in the early years. Sure. I know. Sean, Randy, you came on to this project here, 5 years ago. But I'd be curious of Was that y'all's first interaction? Kind of walk us through just early days of you guys getting to know each other.
So I was actually based in our San Jose office, but my history with Vanderbilt and the fact that we had been awarded this fantastic project, and I didn't really have anything to do with the presentation or the approach that Layton as a whole put to the table. I was just given the opportunity to move back here to run this job, which was a pretty big deal for me, frankly, and my wife. We wanted to get back here. So when I came back, we found this office where we're at and rented it, and kind of the senior superintendent and I started kind of putting the package together, how we were going to go about it. And a couple of things that they being our leadership, wanted to see was, as well as our client, they wanted us to be very, very large proponents and application of BIM modeling and the Revit system, and making sure that it works to the best of the ability so that we could be a true design assist partner to our design teams. And my history was not favorable to that. I've, up until this project, I had done a couple of jobs where we tried to model, and it simply worked in reverse, meaning that there was a false sense of security that we were doing some things, our clash detection correctly, but we simply weren't applying the most simplest terms of what BIM represents. Because BIM modeling starts way in the beginning. It's before you're building anything, you're modeling. And really modeling is almost hand in hand with a procurement process when you're looking at long lead time material items like air handlers or transformers. I can go over this crazy list. So that was the thing in the past that I had not seen success at. So when Randy arrived, and he had moved here, and he had just moved his family here from East Tennessee. And so he and I kind of talking one day, and I said, I got to be honest, I'm a pretty transparent guy. I'm not sold on BIM, and it's going to be a long road to prove that BIM's going to work. But we've been asked to do this, so I'm going to kind of work with you the best I can, but I just wanted you to know my position. And I got to tell you, over time, not only did he win me over, but he taught me a lot. And in this business, if you come to work every day thinking you're not going to learn something because you've been doing it for as long as I have, you better just hang it up. So the learning curve was the key, but just Randy's approach just impressed me, and it was, some of it was him personally as a person and as, you know, how he handled things, and some of it was our process. But at the same time, he was able to get our subcontract base to really get in the middle of it and do their part. And that's really where BIM modeling, that's where the rubber meets the road. If you can't get your key subcontractors to participate in a manner that they need to, then the BIM modeling, you end up on an island, or Randy in this case would, and he would have to contend with things that he couldn't control, and that's the field conditions that are a result of us not doing a thorough and most detailed definition of a model. So that's kind of the story going in, and Randy and I have we've become friends over time, and really I trust him like no other when it comes to modeling. I think that what he's brought to the table and what our biz department, our modeling department has brought to the table has just enhanced our ability to be the best in class when it comes to builders.
Yeah. Now I'm curious a little bit, Randy, on your side. It's like, all right, so you're coming to this job. You got Sean here. That's first, probably a couple of things he said to you is like, hey, man. And I love, first, I don't want to brush over this, like even just the transparency, because that's a hard thing too. You could get 6, 9, 12 months into a job, and Randy's over here trying to fight battles that he had no idea he was fighting, and that could be a whole episode in itself. But yeah, I'm curious, Randy, from your perspective, it's like, hey, Sean, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh my God.
Thank you for your honesty. But yeah, tell me a little bit from your perspective.
Yeah, I did appreciate the transparency. That was good to know up front what the expectations were. But as Sean was saying the story that he relayed there, he said it in a way that only Sean could say. I wasn't feeling threatened, but I could feel the seriousness of where his position was. But because of my experience that I had, seeing what this process can do and the benefits of it, I very confidently said something like, don't worry, it'll be okay. And it's been like that ever since. Obviously, it's not a one-person show. I'm only one person. It takes an entire team. It takes a village, right?
Yeah.
And as Sean also mentioned, the relationships that we have with our subcontractors, it takes getting everybody on board, not just from buy-in, but throughout the project. You know, there's always going to be hurdles and stumbling blocks and issues that we come across. That's why we do what we do early on. It's a big, heavy investment in man hours early in the project. A lot of times I've come across interactions on other projects with project managers, and we're talking about budgets and things like, yeah, I get it, it's a lot of time, but that is returned multiple times throughout the duration of the project when we're not submitting as many RFIs. It's interesting, you can actually look at the RFI logs and almost like a bell curve, there's a ton of RFIs on the front end, but those taper off as the project goes on, whereas other projects that aren't doing this correctly, those RFIs, that curve's going to be much later in the job when we're finding things in the field, and you lose the advantage of fixing those things.
And the results that come from late discoveries. It's not just their RFIs. It's the impending costs. It's the schedule delays. It's the mentality in your subcontractor base. When you look at percentages of a job, I always say this, that the toughest part of the job is the last 20% of the job. Now, it's up to us how well it goes or how well it doesn't go. You got to get out of the gate a certain way. So you have these certain metrics and milestones that you're looking at for a project schedule. You say, all right, at 30% of the schedule, let's take a look. Are we at least moving in the right direction? Do we have something that we can measure? And we did. We had a lot of components in place so we could measure success and failure. And at 50%, you're really studying it harder. But it's at 70%, 65 to 70, you're really looking at it, and if you're in trouble. Frankly, if you've been doing it long enough, you can see it. And to Randy's point, our amount of RFIs that we had to send, which are just simply, they're indicators that we either had a design that wasn't complete and we didn't figure out how to complete it as a team, or we had a condition that we just didn't see coming. And we had an awful lot of those. We had a variety of both. But we had an ability to overcome, and I really believe it's because the way the modeling went and with the way that our approach with modeling and the clash detection, it was minimized to where we weren't dealing with it every day. And in my previous jobs, we were dealing with problems above ceiling, especially in a healthcare job, which this isn't, but I'll revert to examples of hospital projects because they put so much in these above ceiling from the finished ceiling to the deck. There's just so many components and pieces of equipment and what have you that have to get stuffed in these ceilings that you have clash problems left and right. We just avoided a lot of those. And I will tell you, when I walked the basement, it wasn't with him, it was with Mike Herman, our senior superintendent. I walked the first basement in Zeppos College after we finally finished everything. And I had told Mike I thought that we would have problems with these 75-inch ducts that were running right through where we had roof leader piping coming through and we had some other piping. I said, there's going to be some clashes. We didn't have any. We had zero. And that's when I was sold on it after that because it had been vetted out.
Yeah. It's funny. I think it takes walking the job after and going through and seeing wow, all this planning, all this effort, all this predictable outcomes.
Correct.
It really did pay off. And I'm curious, because this is a good segue into this kind of topic, is I think coordination and models have been, let's just say, becoming more standard. It's becoming a little bit more, I would say, what you see on a lot of projects. But this kind of next wave of what I'm going to call reality capture is closely following suit. It's okay, so we've done all this work in building this virtually, but how are we making sure that this is being actually installed correctly in the field? And I'm curious, because I know, obviously, Randy, you do a lot with reality capture kind of processes as well. And I'm curious, Sean, a little bit on your side, because this job obviously is captured both from the air and the ground in ways that even just today I've heard. We are almost in the middle of Greek Village, and literally all the logistical coordination, which I know a lot of people use reality capture for. But I want to talk a little bit about how reality capture is almost kind of this next wave of really technology that Brian and I see. It really hasn't crossed that crest from what you had said, Sean, of I don't believe it. Why do I need to go do that? What's the value that it brings? And I think that's where I'm really curious to camp a little bit on, is to kind of hear your guys' perspective of, okay, we've done all this work in the model. Now let's go make sure that we're doing it right in the field. And what are we doing to capture that to make sure that that is happening?
I'll let Randy speak to that because he uses a lot of tools that are a little bit out of my league, kind of a thing. And we're able to, because there's countless of pieces of equipment and technology that can service globally what you're talking about, but there are some that are specific, and we use some that I find to be very valuable. So
Yeah. So I'll use the example that we've been discussing, haven't touched on here yet, is the Weston Neighborhood Improvement Project that also was running semi-concurrently with the 3 buildings for the residential colleges. So as you mentioned, it's a Greek neighborhood that we were tasked with taking the streets that were being used for vehicle traffic away completely, converting them to pedestrian pathways, all of the overhead utility lines, taking them away, burying them underground. And the biggest challenge to that was also bringing hot and chilled water lines from the central energy plant through this neighborhood to the residential colleges that are on the other side. That's a lot of work. It was over about a year and a half project?
yeah, it was about 17 months.
Yeah. And so obviously we couldn't just say, all right, we need to take this neighborhood, everybody out. We can't do that. So we were literally having to share our construction site with the residents of this Greek neighborhood. And so you can imagine the difficulties with that. So where we were using reality capture technologies was in the way that we would present on a weekly basis what we were planning to do. So instead of trying to find a Google Earth image that was out of date or show the students a drawing, which not everybody's going to understand, we were using our maps from Drone Deploy that were updated weekly with the changing landscape, which was happening constantly. And with that map, we had a dedicated website with a lot of information. We had the map that had some pathways drawn out to show, okay, this week you can go this route to class. You can't go here. This is where you have to go. Next week it would be totally different probably. We had descriptions of day to day what activities were going to be going on, when were we going to be starting. We had links to 360 views of the area so that they can see what's going on. We had links to other things, other information, just to try to be overly communicative to the students, because we realized we were being disruptive. We weren't totally ignorant of that, and so trying to use this technology to the best of our abilities to really help them prepare and have the information that they would need to make their life least impactful as possible.
I think I'd like to add on to that. That's a good point. One of the challenges that I personally had to go through as the leader of our team was reporting up the food chain, I call it, to all the executives. But at the end of the day, at Vanderbilt, you're working for the students, and kind of what he's talking about. We came up with a program where we actually had we published a weekly report that had like drone footage and wayfinding, just so that if we interrupted one flow on a street, we showed what the fencing looked like and where they could go and where they couldn't go, and it paid big dividends. And then we had something else we would do. We called them neighborhood meetings, and we did them every quarter. And so I would take information that we'd get from the drones and just in general, and I'd be able to go and do a report and let the kids kind of ask a bunch of questions, which some did and some didn't. It just depended on who the audience was. But that's a great example of us using technology that you wouldn't normally think about in the construction world, and we utilize this so that we could over-communicate in a very sensitive environment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm curious. I asked this to one of your guys' superintendents out there today, Josh, and was like, "Hey, man, what would you have done without having that? Like, how do you think, going back 20, 30 years ago, or even let's just call it 10 years ago, Sean, of like, how would you have communicated that in a way that could have been just as effective? I mean, it's almost flipped this whole landscape on tools that you have at your disposal to kind of like touch on that maybe a little bit."
Yeah, that's a great point. Looking back, if I were to do something similar to this, let's just say even 10 years ago, I think the challenge would be we wouldn't be able to communicate in a manner, because visual aids is everything. You can talk and put it in a narrative and make a nice sheet and send it out. You learn over time that people don't read. They don't have the time. They're busy. They have their own lives. But if you give them a visual display, they'll take the time to look at that. And that takes this technology you're talking about. Now, something else I neglected to mention, we actually made a website that Vanderbilt kids and anyone, the public, could go to at any given time, and we updated it every single Thursday. And it was all of our drone footage that we felt was pertinent, and any wayfinding changes or any big events that are coming up. Like We imploded, 3 buildings. We blew them up and dropped them, and during the course of this project, and that takes excessive planning. But to use that as an example, we gave the same amount of information to do that large of a component of the work as we did to a weekly report where we're changing the sidewalk path from A to B, from this side of the street to that side of the street. So the technology served its purpose well. 10 years ago, I probably would have been in a lot more tougher meetings because we wouldn't have had that at our disposal. And I still think that interrupting a campus the way we did, maybe we wouldn't have been able to do it in the fashion we did, so the job may have gotten longer and cost more money.
Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned just like communicating up the food chain, right? And we've heard it through a couple other episodes and some folks talking about this, but how do you think that changes the dynamic of you guys in Vanderbilt? Talk about that maybe a little bit.
Another great point. Thank you. We have a fantastic relationship with Vanderbilt for that very reason. I think if there's 3 metrics that I would look at, sometimes I say 5, but 3 that I look at the hardest. One is we're an absolute partner to Vanderbilt, and that's not easy to say. You can say that all day long, but there's ways you show it. And what we're talking about today is a big one. The second one is you can understand what Vanderbilt University is going through with their client, and their client is the students. So just like working in a hospital, we look at it that way. So we put ourselves in the position of Vanderbilt, and we become a fabric of how they look at things. So we become that person that they can trust because we're looking at it from their eyes. And lastly, they have such a level of confidence with us that I find myself in meetings giving updates to some of the highest ranking folks of Vanderbilt University. And it's because the people that I normally answer to have that level of confidence. Well, Sean's approach or Layton's approach is so well thought through that once we explain it to these people, they'll be okay. They'll have that aha moment and go, well, we got a partner here. So it's a great point. I don't think we would be feeling or experiencing the success here had it not been for those components. And technology's played a big role in that and how we apply it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd also be curious to hear more about, it's one thing for Randy to be preaching to the executive level about why they should be using technology. But it's another thing, too, when somebody here, like yourself, who is at that level, is talking to them, hey, this is the future and this is kind of the direction we got to go. How do you kind of communicate that at that level?
Well, okay, so there's, like you said, there's a couple levels. And our executives at the top of our company, they had already wanted this implemented. They saw the value in it. And I think where the real blocking and tackling of the event of this particular subject matter comes in is at the field level. But it really starts at the subcontractor's relationship with us and their understanding that they play a huge role in this. So our sales pitch has to be, and this is what I learned from Randy because I watched him do it. I would get involved with getting updates from him. Kind of my role is when he can't get what he needs from the subs, I step in. It's just how it works. I mean, if you're the executive you get on the phone and you can kind of be a sledgehammer. I mean, I don't like using that term, but you can kind of position them and say, hey, look, don't ignore this. This is important. So several times him and I would talk, and he would say a certain sub was not doing, and I'd get on the phone, call him, and what I recognized was they were having those what I call aha moments when they would finally model these. They'd be like, okay, yeah, I get it. They're saving money and time by taking the time to do it in the manner that we're asking them to. So at the end of the day, they're profitable and they're successful. They're a true partner. We're being a partner of theirs. So if you're asking me how I would communicate that today and moving forward, that would be my first approach, would be we have evidence, overwhelming evidence, as a matter of fact, of how the program works and how it works well, but we're asking you to follow our lead on it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to take that almost a step further, too, of how the visuals, I mean, you talked about how it's helped with the Vanderbilt relationship, but how does it help with your trade partners? I mean, just being able to better manage where they're moving, how they're moving. I mean, I know no one can see because we're sitting in this room how tight the site was when we were walking around. This poor delivery truck was literally backing out.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my.
We have no room to do anything.
But
right.
Talk about how some of the reality capture visuals were just helpful in the trade partner conversations, because I mean that's a big deal. They want to trust you as someone that's managing 10, 15 plus trades on any given day on a site. But
and it's not just somebody throwing a schedule at them saying hit this date.
Yeah, right.
No, there's you're exactly right. There's more to it. The visual aids, when it comes to our subcontract partners, some buy into it, some don't. It's just a level of whether or not they're accepting or not. I mean, that's kind of what I've learned anyway. It's up to us to get the right partners around us. So sometimes you get the right one who understands it up front, and sometimes there's a little bit of a learning curve. But at the end of the day, I think the proof is in the end of the job, towards the end of the job, when they start recognizing they're successful financially. They didn't burn anybody out, which this business has a poor habit of doing, mentally and physically. And they don't have a schedule where at the last 20% of the project, like I was talking about before, everybody's hair is on fire and they're working 90 hours a week just to meet the schedule. And that's what the modeling up front and a proper management of a schedule produces for you. That's what the end result is. You're not, the way we have a saying here, and it comes from our executive vice president. I love the saying. He's like, we're not coming in dragging a bumper. We're coming in, we're either not sliding or we're just crossing home plate because the throw is late. We're there early. So that's always been the big thing. I think about it all the time. Don't be dragging a bumper at the end. And so that's always the goal. And technology, at least applied correctly, like the modeling that I've witnessed in his last 5 years, it plays a vital role in that. So yeah. I guess that would be my response to that.
And I think another key factor of helping us to improve our logistics on site was our utilization of drone deploy during our subcontractor weekly meetings. Instead of a group in a room looking at a board, push-pull schedule, if there's an area that they're talking about, to be like, hey, you need to do this, you got trash right here. Hey, let's pull it up on the map. Let's look at this 360 photo. A picture's worth 1,000 words. A 360 photo is worth 1,000,000 words, I think. Because you can go to those areas and actually look, hey, right there, this is what we're talking about. Let's do this.
It also avoids all right, let's go take a walk after this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Exactly.
You can just talk about it while all the right people are in that room. You don't have to say, okay, you, let's go walk 15 minutes. Go look at this thing that we already have a photo of right now.
Man, that's even a great question for you too, Sean. Of I just remember all those subcontractor meetings that I sat in was like, or OAC meetings is, well, let's go take a look at it after the meeting. It's like, golly. I mean, you guys are probably 3 city blocks away from the job, right? I mean, it's
not even
give or
that.
take.
Yeah, I mean, to walk over there is a good 20 minutes. To walk back and to actually look at the thing that you want to. I mean, that's such a critical point too, Brian. It's like when you can have everyone in the room looking at the right piece of information to solve the real issue that's at hand. I mean, how do you do a job down the road that you don't have those visuals for? And I'm curious too, like, has there been anything that's like surprised you in using some of that documentation of like having it from the aerial perspective or having it from the ground? Like, is it easier? Is it harder? Is it more engaging? Less like, you can go a lot of different ways with that, but I mean, 360 cameras and drones 5 years ago weren't a thing.
Yeah.
And now they're becoming like the staple of your meetings.
Yeah, 360s allow us to do Teams meetings. So I'll step back a couple of years here. Something we need to refocus on, or at least talk about. You realize the first building was built and finished on time right in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, I didn't put that in the timeline of what we were talking, but yeah, for sure.
You get to the point where part of our day, it's pretty crazy, but the university stepped up and wanted us to do this. We sanitized the job site every single day for about 7 months, and we never shut down. We had one weekend shut down for cleaning, whereas jobs all over the city were shutting down left and right where they have an infection of over 80 people. I mean, we were averaging about 180 people on the job site every day. You couple that with just the sheer volume of this job and the fact that some of the components and how we had to construct them is fairly unique, which is where the modeling comes in as well with some of our detailing there's a company we hired out of Canada that played a significant role in our success as well. They were an engineering detailing company. But you look at you look at what COVID could have done to us, and you throw that in the mix and you start talking about this. I think that our successes are just, there's so many things involved, but we were not in a position where we had to stop because something didn't work, because we had modeled it. So that obstruction was not there, which is something that construction normally has, and that's, you get to a point and your mechanics are looking up from their ladder going, what do you want me to do with this? Mm-hmm. We didn't have a lot of that. Mm-hmm. So we had a different challenge, and that was COVID, and we found a way around it. We're extremely proud, and this is it's just the facts. We're extremely proud. We hit all of our dates here. We did not miss a date, and we didn't drag a bumper to the finish line. And we got the new students got moved in on time. That's a big deal to us because that's what we were hired for, to be their partner. And knowing what we overcame, I'm real proud of that. But knowing that it could have been much worse had we not had clash detection that was done in such a manner that it was, we just didn't have any delays related to where the contractors or anyone could go, well, it's not my fault. It's because that door's in the way of that wall, or that duct won't go where that pipe is, or we figured all that stuff out, and that's why I'm so sold on it now.
Yeah, and even like the visual. I mean, go for it, Randy.
I was just say, I'm going to give construction site a highlight for a minute here. So the example I shared with you earlier about one of the so we had a local architect that did the heavy lifting of the design and drawings and all that, but there was another architect out of Washington D.C. that, as Sean was saying, during the height of COVID, when we were trying to get this building, ready and turned over, they couldn't come out here. Travel restrictions being what they were. So we came up with a solution for construction site. The main floors were the ones that had the really, really high-end, high level of detail finishes, and they wanted to see what those were looking like. And at first they said, hey, can you send us some pictures or something? And we're like, hey, we've got something we can do here. And so we used construction site. We went through and took the 360 photos all throughout the first floor, exported that to a PDF, sent that to them in an email, and they were blown away, that they could do that level of review of the project, all the way in DC and not have to be out here on site to do that.
There is an interesting shift when it comes to a lot of like taking these weekly photos, right? Where at first it becomes, okay, let's go take photos once at in wall, and it's a reactive state. It's an insurance tool. If I ever need to go back, if there's an issue, I have this in case of a claim, etc. But then you start capturing at a higher frequency where it becomes more preventative, right? Like we're actually looking at this for monthly requisitions, or we're looking at this to kind of see progress. Like, could you talk more about like that shift, going from this is just an insurance tool to like this is changing the way we build?
Punch list process has gotten way more clean. We have another saying, punch list starts when the job starts, but it's a hard time getting people to buy into that. Just the sum and substance of that is put it in right the first time. You don't have to go back and fix it. With the 360 cameras, we can take pictures weekly, and we can physically go to our sub meetings and say, hey, can you take care of this while you're over there? So these corrective measures are happening ongoing, and they're flowing with the schedule. They're not waiting until we get finished with something, and then we punch it, and then we have to fix something. So that's been the biggest benefit. And again, that's a matter of when you don't have to fall back and rework something, your schedules are solid every time. You're not gonna miss a schedule because you don't have an unknown. But schedules blow up when you have unknowns, and unknowns are usually something you're ill prepared for, some kind of obstacle that you didn't see coming, or something was installed in a manner that didn't get checked, and we have to tear it out and redo it. So, it's at the end of the day, the 360 cameras have brought that ability. So that's been a big one for us. There's other things though. I like the aerial views that we do with the drone every week, and we have 4 reports we give out on this project. One's a weekly report. So Randy comes out and flies once a week, and he'll put 4 pictures on our weekly report. And this weekly report, there for a while, it was getting published to about 400 people, throughout the organization and through Vanderbilt and through our design team. And it served a lot of purposes, but it gave a high level of confidence to our contract, to our client, and to our architects and our designers that, hey, look the progress that's going on. They didn't have to fly here and see it with their own eyes on a regular basis. And then another one of those reports is going to the executive level at Vanderbilt, and I get to use those at what they call the steering committee meetings, which there's one next week. And we'll physically take some of these videos that he's done, and I'll use those videos we'll fly around the building, and they'll be able to see the progress. And again, that's a level of confidence that without that technology, you can't really convince people who are not in our industry, but want to know because they're responsible for the budget or whatever it may be. When they can visually see something like that, a component where they can see it with their own eyes, their ability to go, wow, that's great, works a lot better. And the last thing I'll do, the big tower, the 20-story tower, you weren't going to get the architects to get up on that moving scaffold. It's not a real comfortable environment for anybody. So Randy flew the drone and took pictures. And so the punch list on some of the fancy limestone and the cubbies and everything that are up there, we call it the wedding cake at the very top. He took pictures and that got sent to the architect, and they'd be like, that's good, that's not good, do this, do that. So it served a big purpose there as well. So you're making relationships at the same time. I mean, you're winning people over, and that's when you have a design team that's in your court, things go a lot better. I mean, you just work hand in hand better.
Yeah, it's not about a feature, it's about the function of how you're using it.
That's correct.
And I think it's tricky though, because oftentimes some software out there likes to just kind of push a narrative that's maybe not reality, or push a feature that can earn more business. And it's tricky because, like, at the end of the day, we're talking with guys like Josh, you like, and the guys who are engaged with this daily and weekly, and running coordination and running meetings and running relationships with the owner. Like, it's just fascinating to see how much it's really become a standard now. It's
Right.
like, yeah.
I think the bar's been set too. I mean, if you're really going to do this every day and do it in the level that we're doing it, the expectation is not only you're using this technology, but you're grasping it and you're getting better at it. Because it's part of the sales pitch, frankly, too. When we go in and interview for these larger jobs, we get to take components of some of this technology and we use that, like he was talking about, and to demonstrate and illustrate to this proposed client. These are some of the things we built and how we did it, and it serves such a variety of purposes that it can't just be singled out to, well, we just fly a drone and we just take pictures, or we just do 360 photos once a month, or no, it's every day. It's actually a fabric of how we do business now.
Yeah.
This technology just has taken us to another level.
Yeah, and the technology is not intended to replace anything that we are doing. It's simply to enhance what we are doing,
Right.
and allow us to do our jobs more effectively and communicate better, and the list goes on and on.
I'm curious though, here, like, what would you tell people that are on the fence about it? Or they like see this from afar and they're like, oh, that's great. Like companies like Layton or whomever, like just doing this to kind of put their name out there. Like, I mean, to hear the phrase that stands out to me is like, hey, it's woven into the fabric of our operation. It's like, it's what we do. And like, it just becomes normal, and it's not about the tool anymore. And it's not about the software. It's like, hey, this is just how we do business, period. So like, what would you say to folks that don't have that yet, or are struggling to encourage their leadership team that this is fabric, this isn't like a function, this is what we need to bring into our operations? Like, how would you encourage someone that is in that position?
I would say that we're being left behind if we don't get on board, because the technology is so powerful. But if there's people that are on the fence not wanting it, a lot of times it's because they're not educated to the investment. The investment may be something they're looking at going, I don't know if I want to spend the money and the whatever it takes to get this up and running. They have no idea what that return is. And so if I was asked to give advice on that, I said, look, the investment's minimal. It's what you don't understand that is happening because you don't have it. And you'll see it, and you'll see the effects, the positive effects, if you just give it the opportunity and you apply it correctly. Within 6 months, you're going to see a change in your project's position and how you go about reporting the project's progress, and your relationships as a whole are going to improve. That's just a fact. It comes with the territory of that. Now for us, it's not just the technology we have today, but it continually is getting better. There's new stuff coming out all the time, so I still find myself kind of running uphill trying to keep up with it. But I'm sold on it now, and in fact, when I don't see Randy, him and I are going different directions nowadays. If I don't see him flying, I'll call him or I'll text her or something. I'll say, hey, did you fly this week? Yeah, I flew on Tuesday because I got to be in Salt Lake on Thursday. And so it's part of our fabric. If we don't fly, I kind of like, why didn't we fly? It's the same thing as like showing up to do your safety meeting. You got to do one every day, and now we got to fly every week because I want that. It's just a great tool.
I mean, that is a really good point. It's this two-part relationship where some projects would be like, all right, we're going to start doing 360 photos. It's not really defined from the beginning, but we're just going to start doing it. You give it to an intern, and it's like, all right, you're going to walk around every week, go take these photos. But if there isn't somebody who can actually do something with those photos looking at them, it's a two-part relationship. I mean, that intern is just going to be like, well, why am I taking these? Nobody's looking at these, right? Like, you need the senior superintendents and the superintendents making sure that they're looking at them and doing something with it, right? Like, it's this two-part relationship.
Yeah, it's not like you just don't take pictures for pictures. There's got to be an application to why we do it. So that's training, frankly. So the component maybe we haven't talked a lot about is the technology that's out there today still has to be interwoven with constant training. And to be a great builder, it takes time and it takes training. These youngsters coming out of these great schools all over the country that we're hiring, these interns that we bring in that we hope come back and come to work full time for us. We have to keep in mind that they're still students of it. They still have to be guided. Just you got to take the time to teach it. So, to your point, we could instruct them go out and take 360 pictures, and they do it, and then now what? I don't know. Just take the pictures. I mean, then it's a waste of time. So it's interwoven with how you train and how you apply it, and then teaching them the younger folks how we apply that and why we do it, and the reasoning and the progressiveness to it, and the positive results of it. So good point. I mean, I appreciate you bringing that up because that's a really good point.
And I think going back to your initial question there, Grant, about apprehension when you're considering an investment in this stuff, you can think of it as an example, a framing contractor on a house. Somebody using a hammer versus somebody using a nail gun. There's no question, whatever it costs to use that nail gun, it's worth it. So thinking about the benefits of that and how much time that saves, you don't go out on a job site now without seeing that, It's the same thing with how much does a drone cost? How much does a 360 camera cost? But when I use those, what am I going to get back? It's tenfold what your investment is.
What's funny though is like the concept of walking around and taking photos in your site, even with an iPhone or a point and shoot camera, or whatever, like that's not a new concept, right? Like you should be doing your daily walks. You should be taking progress photos of what's going on. And I guess the thing that doesn't get taken into account is the fact like, well, yes, you are walking around taking photos on the phone, but like, what is the quality? What's the output? Are those discoverable? And if you leave this company, can somebody else 2 years down the line be able to figure out?
Guess what? Everything is discoverable.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is,
Yeah.
unless you go way out of your way to make it not discoverable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to think a little bit from a legal term all the time, I think. So,
Yep.
And you make a good point, Brian. Do you just take that picture and then it lives on your phone and then just disappears? Or do you have a program where you are using the program and that data is then entered into that program where it's searchable, it's archived, it's there to be brought back out when the time comes? So that's a good point. These programs we've been talking about, Plug for Drone Deploy Construction Site, they're great programs that organize and manage the data and save that for the days when we need to go back and reference them, whether it's sooner or later.
I mean, even the concept of like at scale amplifying your, right? Because like I may know I have taken a photo, and if I ever need it, I'll look in my camera roll. But somebody else in the trailer might be dealing with something else, and they might not even know to ask, does anybody have this? But if they go to a program and they look in that area, oh, someone did take a photo in this room, right? Like that is pretty interesting how you start multiplying how much more value you get from me doing something versus like other people being able to kind of access something.
Yeah, it's kind of democratizing the data capture.
Yeah.
When you have more than one person trying to capture that data, it's organized. Somebody else that doesn't know who that person was could leverage that data.
I'm curious. This is a right-hand turn question-ish, but I'm curious, Sean, from your perspective, like capturing on job sites isn't new. There's been service providers that have been around for a long time that have done it, oftentimes hired by universities if they've been told that's something that they can benefit from afterwards. Why do you feel like you guys as a contractor are starting to take that on, and how do you think that that's like, I mean, you've kind of hit on how it's impacting your business, but like talk about that change a little bit, because not that, service providers are still out there capturing and doing things, but why has it benefited you as a contractor to take it on yourself?
Well, number one, we control the data we're trying to collect, because great point you bring up. When we first got here, Vanderbilt had hired someone who was doing their drone flights, and they actually were doing camera shots of all the underground. So they would come out once a week, and it was similar to drone deployed today, but because it would spot different things. But I never understood what the use of it was, and I never got to see what the end result was. It always went to the client, and I always wondered in my back of my mind what prompted them to want to do this. So, once the relationships were established, I found out that it was just, as you were saying, it was just something that they did, just how they did things. And I'm like, well, we have that same technology, maybe we should do it. And maybe you guys don't pay for that. And eventually that's what happened. We ended up flying ourselves. But Randy can speak to this better than I can. But at first, when we first got here, we had to deal with being in the flight path of a metaflights. So Vanderbilt's trauma center is 7 blocks to the south of us. And for him to fly a drone at a certain height, whatever that height was, you had to get special permission from the FAA and I don't know, some other people, because we're in a direct flight path. So that was something I learned, that I'd never dealt with in the past. But the third party company that was doing it for him before was like, oh yeah, we did that all the time. Well, I learned later, after we had taken it over and Randy had done his due diligence and was doing it correctly, that they were not filing the proper paperwork. So there's do's and don'ts. And look, I'm not saying that a third party's wrong, by no means. I mean, it's been a part of doing business for a long time. But when you can capture that and handle that and manage it yourself and utilize it in the manner you see best for the success of the project, I just think you want to do that whenever you can. And Layton's taken the position that we have a specified department that does nothing but viz modeling, drone deploy. That should speak volumes to our commitment to it. So we have a dedicated department to it. A lot of companies don't, and I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, because obviously it's an investment. But for us, it's been a wise move. So,
Anything you want to add there, Brian?
No.
Well, fellas, we could sit here all day.
Yeah,
These are
sure.
I mean, these conversations are awesome. It is truly encouraging to hear just your guys' perspective. That's what Brian and I feel like so lucky to be like asking these questions. Because to get both perspectives is really just awesome. And I mean, we have over 60 years of experience between the two of y'all, and it's cool to
just aged us. Thanks a lot.
Hey, well,
I'm only 27 years old, so it's encouraging to hear things like that as well, right? Like companies, like people from the outside look at construction like it's this outdated, antiquated, like very old school type of industry, and partially right, but at least for the direction that like everybody is trying to move, it is inspiring to see that.
Ollie and the plane kind of get us on here. Any last thoughts? Anything we haven't covered that has kind of sparked a thought that you've had, or something that comes to mind?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Yeah. Any stories we haven't hit on? Any like fun stories of just like, hey, this one photo helped me with this, or this one time I saw this, and like those are always fun ones that you kind of hear water cooler talk. Or
so we have another project out in Smyrna called Creekside, and we just rolled out drone deploy on that about 4 months ago.
It was back in, actually longer than that, October.
Well, I hadn't seen really how you were applying it. He was going out and flying and all that. It's 3 tilt-up buildings, large buildings. It's on 54 acres. And I've seen how drone deploy now has helped us, because all the grade shots and everything we have to do and all the underground. But in the beginning, James, our superintendent out there, he was really, really wound tight about how we were going to do this, how we were going to do that. And he wanted all this technology to come to the table, and right now, because he's at that part in his career where he understands the technology really well, and he's a really good builder, and so the two combinations work real well. But he was still trying to figure out how it could all apply to him. So we kind of had a little bit of a we were running in circles there for a couple of months, and then you add weather in and just all the things that that are out of your control. So I kind of watched that evolve, and I was proud of the fact that I didn't get too involved with it and too voiceful. I just kind of stood back and watched it. And now they have, I say they got their mojo. It's kind of, when a job's going well, like the one you toured today, they got their mojo. It's clicking, and they're doing real well out there as well. And it's because we're applying this technology. And so when I bring this stuff up, James is like, yeah, we got it. The attitudes are different. And I'm telling you right now, if there's anything I'd close with anyone who's listening, who maybe is on the fence, it's not just the technology and what it does for the project itself. It changes the fabric of how your people operate, and it really does enhance their day. They actually get up every morning and they're pretty happy to come to work, because construction, there's nothing easy about it. I joke a lot that, hey, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. And, you know, to your point, you say there's certain things like people still think it's old school, and they think this. There are parts of construction that are going to be old school and will always be old school, and that is, are you a great builder or aren't you? And so the great builder, you have to have all these tools in your toolbox, and technology is one of the tools in your toolbox. And I would just close with saying, again, with anybody who's listening, try it. Open your eyes and your ears and in your mind, and just try it and apply it, and surround yourself with people who want to be a part of it and understand that, and you will get your investment back tenfold, and you'll probably improve your bottom line from the financial component piece, which I ultimately am responsible for. We've been successful on our jobs, and this has played a big role in it. Now I'm convinced of that.
And I'll add to that, if for anybody that's considering adopting any of these technologies, you know, you can make a list of 5 things why you think it would be a good idea. After pulling the trigger, within 6 months to a year, that list of things will double, you know, because once you start using it, once you dig in and understand how it really works, you'll think, oh, I can do this with this now, or oh, I can take this data, bring it over here, you know, and do XYZ types of things. You know, and that's the beautiful thing about technology. Like I said, it's not to replace anything that we're doing, it's to enhance what we are doing. So by taking advantage of these benefits and these opportunities that it opens up, I no longer have to spend, you know, a lot of time doing this. Hey, now I can go over and do this. I can look through drawings longer. I can actually go out, walk the job and look for stuff. So it enables us to do things not only better, but more effectively and deliver predictable outcomes.
There it is. Coming back, we had talked to another company solely around their interest of implementing technology was improving their team's life.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it's a pretty ambitious statement that not a lot of people would correlate to why they're choosing to invest in some of these things. But it's like, hey,
You have to invest in your people too. So if your people are happy, you're going to have a lot better product.
yeah, that was truly one of their filters of like, hey, why we would choose something or why we wouldn't, and just asking their team like, hey, does this improve your quality of life? Like, does this improve when you come to the job? And it was like, well, that hits hard. It's a good question to maybe be asking. And no, it's great. Brian, any final thoughts or things?
No, just want to say thank you so much for, you know, giving us a tour around this beautiful campus and kind of the way you guys do things.
Brian asked this question, and you ask it more in the field, but I think it's worthy of asking here. You're going to ask your question, your legacy question?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Oh, no, I mean, you know, end of the day, it's you are shaping the way a skyline looks and the way people's lives will be affected long further than, you know, a lot of people are going to be here for. And, you know, how do you see this project in particular, you know, fitting into your personal legacy?
The people. It's not the buildings for me, it's the people. So when I hang it up and I say I'm done, I got to look back and see the people, and that's my legacy. It's the people. Building's going to go on and on forever. It's the people that make it happen, and how they're developed and how they develop into leaders, because there are the next generation of leaders. They're on. You walked with them today. That's it. It's the people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And to I guess to add on to that, I would say I don't know that I'll ever build another project like this with this level of detail and finishes. It's just so unique, and the challenge that it was to make sure that it could come together and to do my part. I was just one piece to the puzzle. Sean, going back to what Sean was saying, our team here has just been awesome. We're all like a family. We all support each other. Titles don't mean anything. We all just do our job and look for ways to support each other, and that's ultimately what it comes down to is leveraging technology to let us do what we do best better.
Yeah. Well said. Team, it's been really fun to grow the circle of folks that I've known at Layton. You two are clearly two more on that list that it's been just an honor, one, to walk around campus and see these projects, and not only just that, but to your point, it is the people, and that's what we're doing this for, who we're doing this for, and we hope that for the folks that are listening in that you took some notes and had some things that stood out, because there's a lot of things that I think that all of us can take away from what you guys were sharing, and I appreciate it, just that you would spend time with us to be willing to share those things. It's oftentimes we get so busy that we don't have opportunities to do these types of opportunities, and so
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
No, this is great. Thank you for tuning in on this episode. We will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much. Make sure to subscribe to Built Different on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Let's build this community together.